Tabe has just released Arc 7 Chapter 48, and this video will be a summary of the chapter. I highly recommend you check out my Arc 7 Chapter 47 summary. Anyways, let's begin. Subaru's eyes widened at Abel's declaration that Tanza, the dear-looking girl, was behind the whole situation. Subaru didn't understand why she would do that. Tanza was a child and seemed unsociable, however Abel assured that she was the one responsible. Subaru verbalizes that he doesn't understand why Tanza would do it, however Lewis jumps on Subaru's back. Even though Lewis just knocked out more than 10 people, now she had an innocent look on her face. Lewis's rampage earlier was no doubt what Subaru saw during his time at the Petelguese watchtower. It wasn't that the power came from Lewis herself, it was rather a power Lewis stole from others through her authority. With that, Lewis was pushed down by Subaru. Upon seeing this, Subaru saw her dress, which was stained red, so he remembered that she was injured, so he had to treat her wound. However, as Subaru tried to pull her dress up and inspected the wound, there was a few droplets of blood but no scar, so Subaru vocalizes that it healed, albeit he is unsure. Either way, there was traces of bleeding but no scars. Subaru had ensured that Lewis was not injured. In the background, we see Abel ask again where Tanza is. We see that Medium is standing behind the boy, holding her sword to intimidate him, even though she wouldn't use her sword on the boy. It's just for show. Abel states that he's asked 3 times, and there won't be a 4th time. The boy says he didn't know before stating, if you want to know, you can go to. However, he cuts himself off before saying, because you're the ones who Tanza. He cuts himself off again. By the way, that's how he was actually talking, by the way, so he was speaking incoherently. Either way, the boy reaches for Abel's throat. However, before the hand can reach Abel's throat, a small hand presses against the sheep boy's head, smashing him into the ground, knocking him unconscious. This was the Lewis who randomly walked up to the sheep boy to knock him out. Subaru was shocked. After all, this was the same power that Libat and Kaitos used, meaning that Lewis was still Lewis Arneb, meaning that the girl in the white world who had torn apart Subaru's heart and judged return by death as a blessing rather than a curse, and also called Subaru a monster, was here. Abel muttered that they had to find Obart. Subaru was shocked that Abel wanted to find Obart. After all, the sheep boy made no coherent sense when talking about Tanza's location. Medium checks on Al, and Subaru asks what that's about, looking for Obart when Tanza was behind the situation. Abel touches the demon mask, and Subaru in rage pulls it off. Abel asks what Subaru is doing, and Subaru says he should tell them after all, they're all friends. Abel repeats the words friends with a question mark. Subaru's momentum declined whilst looking at Abel's face. A part of him felt guilty at calling Abel a friend, mainly since he said it out of spite. Medium interjected and said to Abel that they were friends, so he should tell them what's going on. Abel sees this and explains, everyone who attacked him have horns. People with horns are persecuted, mainly since their horns are similar to those that witch beasts have. Subaru understood this. After all, Emilia was persecuted because she looked like Satella, the Witch of Envy. Subaru doesn't understand, however Abel tells Subaru to think. Chaos Flame is like a safe haven to them. Yorna wouldn't allow them to come under harm. Yorna once rebelled against Vincent due to a small deer girl dying before, so she rebelled for the sake of one person. Abel states that Yorna helps those who love her. Those outside of that circle aren't included. Subaru and Medium state that's normal to be kind to people who like you, and Lewis raises her hand in agreement. Abel continues, Yorna ensures peace in Chaos Flame, so the horned people won't be persecuted. Yorna's presence is required in Chaos Flame. Subaru still doesn't get it. Abel looks at Subaru and continues. If Yona joined them, she would be involved in a full-scale rebellion against the Empire. Subaru understood why the people felt guilty. It's due to the fact that they were doing this for their own place in the world. It's also why the sheep boy who threw Subaru into the air apologized whilst doing it. As they talk, Subaru also asks about Tanza. Abel concludes that they don't know where Tanza is, namely the horned people. The reason why the sheep boy tried to attack Abel was because the horned people assumed that Subaru and the others did something to Tanza, which explains why the horned people attacked them. Of course, that was the theory. Either way, the question was why there were horned people outside the inn. What happened there? The consensus was that Tanza gathered the horned people outside the inn when she visited last night, meaning that what most likely happened was the horned people were waiting outside. They did not see Tanza leave the inn, so assumed that something happened to Tanza, which explained why they only attacked when Subaru and the rest left the inn. In other words, the only way for Tanza to disappear without getting noticed means that Obart is most likely helping her. Tanza and Obart were working together. Another way of thinking about hide and seek is to think that Obart hid Tanza. Subaru thinks it's against the rules of harming each other, but Abel says that Obart would just say he didn't do anything. Either way, Abel states that they need to find Obart. With that, he puts on his mask, again reiterating that Obart is testing them. With that, Subaru thinks about Abel's words and states he isn't smart to work it out. But Abel states that Subaru is losing his wits, and it must be due to Obart's technique, stating that Obart's technique may have affected Subaru's soul itself, since the soul, the Ode, and the body are linked. Hearing this, Al stated, "So it's because of the old man who messed with my body," and Al stated he would pay the old man back. Subaru seeing this realizes that Al's irritation shows that he's also experiencing physiological effects. Abel explains his plan. There's a possibility everyone in the city would side with Tanza, so finding a bar full of strangers would be beneficial. Subaru thinks about the time he was being hunted by Todd, and he went to a bar and hired a mercenary, who was then killed immediately. Subaru wonders about money, but Abel assures them that they're fine, mainly due to the efforts of Dicker Ottoman. Subaru asked if they were going to a bar, but Abel said initially they were. However, since Obart was teaming up with Tanza, that means they'll have a lot of manpower. After all, Tanza is Yorna's squire. If Yorna is the first in command, then Tanza is second in command. Abel states that if they were serious about coming after Subaru and the group, there would be people around the tavern. Abel states that they don't need to fall for a transparent trap, but they have a way to force their way through before Abel turns and looks at Lewis. We see Lewis combing her hair, looking puzzled, as Medium stands next to her. Medium praises Lewis's abilities. Subaru watched Medium and Lewis. Medium petted Lewis and Lewis accepted her touch. However, Subaru rushed forward and grabbed Medium's wrist, stating Medium shouldn't get close to Lewis. However, Medium stated she saved everyone, including Subaru. With that, Al asked Subaru to tell them what's going on. Al continued, this is no longer a situation where he can just keep it in the dark, as they're all in this together. Hearing this, Subaru reflexively shielded Lewis. Subaru wasn't sure, he couldn't think of a lie, so he just told the truth, that Lewis was the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony. Subaru never told anyone. It was a secret he kept to himself ever since arriving in Wallachia. Al and Abel were stunned. Even Medium hesitated by repeating the words as she stared at Lewis. This was the sort of response Subaru feared. Subaru was optimistic that Flop and Medium would accept Lewis if they knew the truth. However, that was just a silly dream. Medium was showing true fear towards Lewis. Al told Subaru to not joke. Subaru said it's not a joke and he's serious. Al said it's even worse then. Al pulled out his sword and stabbed the ground, telling Subaru if he forgot what happened in Pre-Stella. Al continues, saying that there was no damage to Priscilla or himself, however Subaru's friends were hurt and she was part of that. Al was correct, Subaru shouldn't have taken Lewis with them. Medium was scared, Al was angry. The only person left was Abel. Abel states that he doesn't know how they treat witch cults in other countries. However, they are executed in the Empire, no questions asked. Hearing this, Subaru calls Lewis's name and immediately he was in the air. We see Lewis grabbing Subaru by the torso and she jumped into the air onto the rooftops. He had no idea why he called her name. Just because she saved his life doesn't mean Subaru has to save her life. He just thought he couldn't abandon the girl. He just doesn't want to give an answer to Lewis whilst his arms, legs and head have shrunk. It's not a Rem problem or anyone else's problem, it's Subaru's problem. Medium and Al call Subaru to come back. Lewis took Subaru up above on the rooftops. Subaru knew that no matter what happened, Lewis would most likely be killed if he stayed there. This was not something he could think of now. He had to find Obart and break the technique which was making himself a kid. Then he would have the power to think over Lewis's situation and speak to the others. Subaru and Lewis would find Obart without relying on Abel and the others. With that, Lewis yelled in agreement and the chapter ends. Yeah, so interesting chapter. Everyone knows the truth. It's interesting. Again, this is going down the Lewis redemption route. I feel like Lewis will get redeemed. Honestly, even though Abel said, like, this is where I think the sort of disconnect is. Even though Abel said that they should execute all witch cultists, I feel like he was going to say something like, well, Lewis is helping us so we can keep her on our team for now. I felt like she was going to say something like that, but Subaru ran away immediately. I feel like that's going to be the gotcha moment later on in a few chapters when Subaru figures out what to do. Honestly, nothing much happened, but we do know that Al is blaming Obart for his current state. It's obvious that his power is disabled at the moment. So, obviously, Obart is Al's prime person that he wants to take down now. So we'll see what happens.